have regions like, I don't know whether they call it Australia East, then we have Central, which is represented by Canberra, and we have South, which is represented by Victoria. So these are the locations. So in India, Central is represented by a city by name Pune. South is represented by a city by name Chennai. South Central is represented by a city named Hyderabad. So where do I find all this information, Abhi? Okay, all you have to do is open up a new tab and then type Azure regions. Choose the right region for you, click on it. And then if you see here, geography, I'll just select India. And when I select India, you would see those three options: Central India, Pune; South Central, Hyderabad; Southern India, Chennai, right? So these are the places. Similarly for Australia, if I scroll up and if I select Australia, you would see Central, East and Southeast. Victoria, New South Wales, Canberra. So these are the places where we have. So a geography is just a physical location on the world map. A region represents set of data centers, right? And then region can be any of this. Availability zone. Interchangeable term for a data center. That's what an availability zone is. Typically, it's representing your data center. An availability zone can be a single data center or multiples of 3 data centers. And what is a data center? Place where you run your workload. This is what we have. I'm just going to post this information in the chat box. Go through it. Let me know if you have any questions. Depending upon the region, your availability zones would vary. For example, US is a matured region, right? United States. I select that. Check this out. Region. Central US, East US. Within East US, I have 3 availability zones. Within East US 2, I have 3 availability zones. Within Central US, I have 3 availability zones. Not every place you will see 3 availability zones. Coming soon means they are building those data centers up. That's what we have. So if you scroll up, you would see the definitions. Yeah. All good so far? Just give me a thumbs up if you're following me. Thanks, Vijay. Thank you, others. Thanks, Vadita. Let's get going. So now that we understand that, how am I going to protect your data? So the step 1 was to create a storage account. Let's say you're creating a container, maybe because you want to go with a blob storage. Now you're uploading files to it. I told you that by default, we offer redundancy to you. 3 copies of your data is maintained. So that's where LRS comes into picture. Locally redundant storage. So have this KB article open. This one. Close this one. Open this KB article. The first option that you see is locally redundant storage. What does it say? Hey, I'm going to replicate your storage account 3 times within a single data center in a primary region. Check out the diagram. So the blue box is your region. The gray box is your data center. Within that data center, I'm going to keep your data 3 times, 3 copies. Abhi, why are you doing this? To accommodate rack failures, to accommodate network failures, to accommodate disk failures, any kind of failures that can occur within a data center, I can fix it with LRS. So 3 copies of data. Check out the points on the whiteboard, on the notepad. Replicates your storage account 3 times. 11 nines of durability. If a disaster such as fire or flooding occurs within the data center, all replicas of your storage account using LRS may be lost or unrecoverable. So this is a very, very important point. Make sense, everybody? Just give me a thumbs up with the 3 points. If there's a flooding, if there is a disaster such as fire, all your 3 copies are gone because all 3 copies were residing within the same data center. So how do I fix that? That's where ZRS comes into picture. Zone redundant storage. What is ZRS here? Replicates your storage account synchronously across 3 availability zones within a primary region. What do you mean by 3 availability zones? Rather than keeping 3 copies of data in a single data center, I'm going to keep those 3 copies of data in 3 different data centers. Check out the picture. But these data centers are within the same region. For example, when I talk about India, one of the region is southern India, which is where the city Chennai comes into play. And what I'm saying here is, hey, I'm going to have 3 data centers within Chennai. It's a big city, right? And then I'm going to maintain 3 copies within these 3 data centers, so that at any given point of time, if one data center goes down, maybe because of some kind of flooding or some kind of disaster, I still have my data protected. So this is what ZRS does. Because your data is distributed across multiple data centers, your resiliency is improved. See here, rather than 11 nines, it's 12 nines now. ZRS by itself may not protect your data against a regional disaster. What do you mean by regional disaster? If I'm not wrong, it was 2015. Okay, back in 2015, the whole city of Chennai was submerged in water. It was a very bad situation. God forbid, and we should not experience it again. But what I'm trying to highlight here is schools were shut, offices were shut, government was not running, literally, right? So people were helping one another. So what if something like that happens? All your 3 data centers within the city are submerged in water. What will happen? Hey, ZRS can't be of any help. Why? Because ZRS says I'm going to keep 3 copies within the same region across multiple data centers. Same region is the point here. So how do I overcome the challenge? That's where we have something called GRS. Now remember this, with LRS and with ZRS, you only had 3 copies of data. The moment you bring GRS, which is Geo Redundant Storage, first point to understand, you'll have 6 copies of data. Okay. Second point to understand, you will have 3 copies in one site, 3 copies in another site, which means 3 copies in one data center, 3 copies in another data center in another region altogether. So, P here means primary. S here means secondary site. So I'm going to perform LRS, 3 copies in the same data center, and I'm going to perform LRS even in the destination, which means on the secondary site it's going to be LRS. So that's why I've written LRS plus LRS. So if you see here, point number 1, copies your data synchronously 3 times within a single physical location, the primary region using LRS. It then copies your data asynchronously to a single physical location in a second region that is hundreds of miles away. So in simple terms, let's say East US is my primary region. The moment I enable GRS, West US will be my secondary region. For example, let me show it to you practically here. I can change my redundancy options at any given point of time. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to storage account and I'm search for redundancy. And then if you see here, LRS should have been selected, yes, as it is. And you can see the primary location is East West, which means within that East West, within a single data center, all 3 copies are getting maintained. I'll just change it to GRS. What is GRS? Rather than 3 copies, you're going to go with 6 copies. I'll go save. The moment I do this, what will happen? Check out the diagram on the screen. West US, secondary site. You see, this is thousands of kilometers away from one another. Everybody following me so far? Just give me a thumbs up. And then, see here, it clearly says failover cannot yet be initiated because the initial data synchronization from the primary to secondary is in progress, which means I need to replicate the data. The replication is not done. So while it's not done, you can't literally do the failover. So I just go back to the original setting, which was LRS. I can do this on the fly. Yes, it's auto selected. It doesn't give me the option to select, hey, my secondary region should be this. If you want to do that, where you want to offer secondary selection by yourself, bring DR, which is Azure Site Recovery. Okay? But when you're going with the storage account option, it's auto selected. So if you look at the points, point number one, we just understood 6 copies of data, 3 copies in one data center, another 3 copies in another data center. Regions are different, hundreds of kilometers away from one another. Because we are maintaining 6 copies, see here, the starting was 11 nines. Then with ZRS, we got 12 nines. Now we are saying 16 nines. So this is a good thing. We are giving you highest resiliency. If a disaster such as fire, flooding occurs within the data center, all replicas of the storage account using LRS may be lost or unrecoverable. Data in the secondary region is not directly accessible to users or application unless a failover occurs, which means you need to do a failover, saying that, hey, go to this particular site. Then your data will be accessible to you. We also have GZRS. What is GZRS? Geo Zone Redundant Storage. What we are saying here is, hey, I understand that you're going to go with 6 copies the moment you see the term Geo, but rather than LRS plus LRS, can I do ZRS plus LRS? Which means on the primary side, rather than keeping all 3 copies of data within a single data center, can I put them across 3 different data centers? The answer is yes, and that's exactly what we are showing you here. Combines the high availability provided by redundancy across availability zones with protection from regional outages, also by providing you geo-replication. Data in GZRS storage account is copied across 3 availability zones in the primary region. It is also replicated to a second region for protection from regional disasters. 16 lines of durability because you still have 6 copies only. No improvement there. But then keeping all 3 copies within a single data center in your primary region, I'm going to go with 3 different data centers. Check out the diagram here. Scroll down. You will see this is GRS, and then you will see GZRS. Check out the GZRS diagram. I have a question from Ahmed. If it makes sense, can we have a territory region for GRS or GZRS? Unfortunately, no. I mean, depending upon your subscription, it will auto-select the regions for you. For me, if East US is the primary region, automatically the closest would be, your secondary region would be East US. Let me show it to you. So we go with the concept called region pairs. Region pairs Azure. So when I open this article, you can see a list which is recommended by Microsoft. So within India, if Central India is your primary region, the second region which will auto get selected is Southern India. Earlier we used to have West India, which is Mumbai. Now they are removing it. They are bringing Hyderabad, which means Central, South Central. So the nearest one would be South India. So we saw East US, right? Where is East? Okay. East US, West US. This is the reason why you saw West US being selected. Okay, entire country itself, that's where again site recovery comes into picture. Because this is all happening across regions within entire country. Now tell me something. We aren't going to go for a world war. Forbidden, right? God forbidden. But yeah, that's a very hypothetical scenario that all your data centers across your country are going down at the same time, unless Mr. Robo comes to active. Have you guys watched this series called Mr. Robo? It's an awesome series on politics and then how hackers can control all these things. Yeah, this is the one. If you haven't watched it, watch it. In this series, Elliot is the guy who tries to bring down the whole country's what do you call it? Everything to pause. So he wants to wipe out all our loans and everything, unless Ahmed wants to be Mr. Elliot. Okay. So yeah, what's the things? Yeah, I understand. But again, yeah, AZ-305 is available to you. That's where your data backups come into picture. And the quickest solution for ransomware attack is, hey, I don't want to pay you a penny, okay? You're not going to decrypt that data? Forget it. I'm just going to delete it and restore it from my backups. That's why most of the organizations have backups in place. But however, we also have solutions like Microsoft Defender and Sentinel, which can help you protect your environment from the beginning. To make sure that the risks are not only from the outside world, but they could also be from inside. Okay? Everybody good so far? So that was, what do you mean by ER solutions? Can you elaborate a little bit more? What is ER for? For me, ER means express route. Okay, enterprise recovery. We have Azure Backup, which allows you to recover your data, but if the data is permanently lost, recovery, I don't know for sure. But let me just make a note of it, because as per the policies defined, any data, it's our responsibility for you to provide the resiliency, right? So behind the screens, we would be doing all that is required for your data to be kept highly available. But what if the complete thing goes down? I have no clue. If I'm not wrong, we do not offer enterprise recovery for the data which is not in the cloud. Okay, but let me see what is the stance of Microsoft on enterprise recovery. Okay, just give me a thumbs up if you're following me so far. So that was about redundancy. Now the last point on the whiteboard or on the notepad is something called read access. Hey, especially when we are talking about GRS and GZRS, you have 6 copies of data, 3 in the primary side, 3 in the secondary side. And then the data in the secondary side is not being used until you do a failover. This is bad. So now the question is, can I use that data in the secondary side for reading purposes? The answer is yes. So if you go back to the cloud, when you are, let me close this out. When you are creating a storage account, you would see this option. See here, if I select GRS, you see make read access. But if I change it to LRS, that make read access is gone. If I select ZRS, that make read option doesn't come. Can somebody tell me why? Why do I see that option, make read access only for GRS and GZRS, but not for LRS and ZRS? See here, the moment I select LRS, it's gone. Can somebody tell me why we are not getting that option, make read access for LRS and ZRS?
Maybe it's on passive mode.
No. Think, you know the answer already. Okay. See here, ZRS not available, LRS not available, but the moment I say GRS, it's available.
Okay. In global redundancy, I guess geo redundant, right? You cannot update anything on the remote DC. It should.
Yeah. I mean,
it should be only read only. If you have to update it, I guess it needs to be changed into some other mode and then update.
Almost there. So the point is not with respect to accessibility. The point is, why am I getting this option only in GRS and GPRS? The simplest answer is 6 copies. 3 in the primary, 3 in the secondary. Isn't that what we have learned? And then, like Roshan says, the secondary is always read-only. You can't update it unless you do a failover. That's correct. But the point here is, you're getting the option to read from the secondary side only when you have data on the secondary side. And with GRS and GZRS, we maintain data on the secondary side, which means total 6 copies. Go back to the notepad. With LRS and with ZRS, with this option, LRS, see here, 3 copies only. 3 copies only. But here, 6 copies. Here, 6 copies. Which means double. So because we have 3 copies in primary side and 3 copies on the secondary side, we are using the data in the secondary side for read purposes. Does it make sense? Give me a thumbs up. So that's what the read access clearly says here. When you enable read access to the secondary region, Your data is always available to be read from the secondary, including a situation where your primary region becomes unavailable. So this is what we have.
So if I mount storage to a VM and it has got like 3 copies under it, so the read is always going on the primary copy, or does split between based on the volume of the transactions coming in?
That's a very good question. And keep in mind, it's always going to be from one copy. So I think that information.
Config.
Sorry to interrupt you there. I think that information is also available in that KB article which we have opened. Let me open that. Read. Let me close all these articles. I think I've closed it. Let me reopen it. Here's your redundancy.
Yeah, I found it.
Yeah.
It's further down.
Microsoft recommends it as Azure File Workloads. Blah, blah, blah. This is one point for write operations. Read access is what? Say Vijay has shared the link to the same place. Yeah. Design your application for read access to secondary. But again, this section only covers for GRS and GGRS.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh. So that answers your query, and this is making sense now. Any questions, guys, so far? What we'll do is we'll quickly cover the rest of the topics on the whiteboard, then hit the deck. We need to cover the deck before we go for the lunch, and then we will come back, talk about databases. So we have about 3 more topics. I need 15 minutes on the whiteboard. Let's finish it off. Another important thing while configuring your storage that you must think as an architect is access tier. Hey, this data that we are talking about, are we gonna access this every day, or are we gonna access it once in a while, or are we never gonna access it? So for example, here in Singapore, or most of the developed countries, you would see that it's a compliance rule to manage customer records for so many days. After which, you can delete those records, right? But these records must be confidential and it must be maintained, right? So if there is any such compliance purposes for which you want to maintain your data, so archive storage comes really handy. So the first point to remember for archive storage is lowest storage cost, highest data retrieval charges. Which means keep your data only when you know that you're not gonna need it, that you're not gonna access it. The minimum resting period that we want the guarantee from the customer is for 180 days, which means if you're bringing your data to archive tier, we expect you to keep the data for minimum of 180 days. Does that mean I can't change the tier or I can't move the data out? You can, but you will get a penalty. Right? Remember that. So always remember data in archive mode is offline, which means you can't read it from them, and it can be considered as your secondary backup data. So this is where I want to give you this KB article here, which talks about penalty. Penalty, rehydrate, Azure. The Azure Access TS. So here, I'll just search with the keyword penalty. Archive here. Check this point out. Data must remain in the archive here for at least 180 days or be subject to an early deletion charge. For example, if a blob is moved to archive tier and then deleted or moved to hot tier after 45 days, you will be charged an early deletion fee equivalent to 135 days, which means 180 minus 45. It's kind of a locking period, but it's not a hard lock, which means at any given point of time you can change it. So this is where I'm going to respond to Vijay in the chat box. Hope that answers your query, Vijay. It's just that you must be prepared for penalties. Also remember, the data is offline, which means you have to make it online. That process is called as rehydrate. And rehydrate itself will take approximately 15 hours. So let me search if we have that keyword here. See here? To read or download blob in the archive tier, you must first rehydrate it to an online tier, either hot, cool, or cold. Data in the archive tier can take up to 15 hours to rehydrate. Keep in mind, you're keeping your data in archive tier only for the purpose of compliance. You're not actually reading from it. That's why the storage cost is cheap than the accessing cost. For example, let me show you here. Storage pricing Azure. Okay, pricing table. Oh, let me go with pricing calculator Azure. Okay, I'm going to the pricing calculator. Here in this link, it's going to tell you the cost, but let me do it real check. So I'm going to storage here. I'm going to storage accounts here. Okay, view. I'm going with blob storage, for example, standard tier. I'm going with LRS, and I'm going with access tier as hot. Okay, for 1000 GB data, approximately $21 per month is what I would pay, right? But the moment I change it to archive tier, from $21, how much did it become? 99 cents. Check out the pricing factor. Because hot tier means you're going to frequently access the data, I'm going to go with $21 of charge to you. How much is the cool tier? $15. Approximately about 40% or 38% change there. So all that information is available to you here. So now let's talk about the cool tier and then the hot tier. What do you mean by cool tier? Cool tier is infrequently accessed information. Anything that you're infrequently accessing it, you want to keep it handy, you go with the cool tier. But again, the resting period here is for 30 days. What do you mean by infrequent? Hey, I'm sure that I'm not going to need this data for the next 30 days, but on the 31st day or later, I might use it. So go with cool tier. Lower storage cost, higher access. Short-term backups or disaster recovery are common use cases for cool tier. Hot tier, high storage cost, like we saw in the calculator, and lowest access cost. Frequently accessed data is what we keep in the hot tier. So by default, it will be hot. But if you're sure you're not going to use it frequently, then you can change the tiers as well. So this is one of the design considerations that you must look into when we talk about access TS. So access TS is directly related to your cost. So keep that in mind. Redundancy is related to your cost. Keep that in mind. So if I go back to pricing calculator here, the redundancy option that I've selected is LRS, right? Let me make it hot for an example. So this we saw $21. But the moment I change this to GRS, it becomes $46 because I'm maintaining 6 copies of data rather than 3. Because I'm occupying double the space, you're going to pay me double. If I'm going with GZRS, it will be somewhere about 47 or 46. Okay, it's still 46. That's good. Give me a thumbs up if you're following me so far. Thank you. The next topic that we have here is how am I going to secure my access to the storage account? So we have something called SSE. What do you mean by SSE? Storage Service Encryption. This is similar to your BitLocker. So what we are trying to highlight here is any data by default that you add to your storage account is encrypted. You don't have to worry about this. Why? Because you can use platform managed keys, or you can bring your own keys to encrypt your data. Again, you can choose this option while creating the storage account. For example, if I take your attention back to the browser, click on create storage account, see here encryption, Microsoft managed keys, customer managed keys. If you have your own key management environment, whether a key vault or a KMS server, where you can bring in your own keys, you can make use of it. SSE is data at rest encryption. Then we also have SAS. This is very, very important, guys. Most of the developer community uses SAS. What is SAS? SAS stands for Shared Access Signature. So it basically answers 3 questions for you. What resource, what permissions, how long? Now, if I were to connect to the storage account, I can use tools like Storage Explorer. See here, I'm just searching for Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. And then, in order to access it, I need either the Azure account information or I need either the Azure keys, which will give me the full control on the storage account. I don't want to get full control, but rather I would like to give you a customized permission. So that's where SAS comes into picture. See here, sign in with Azure, attached to a resource. The moment I click on attached to a resource, it's asking me, what resource? I'm saying storage account or service. Then it is asking me, do you have the connection string, or do you have the SAS, or do you have account name and key? So by default, when you create a storage account, you would get 2 keys with it, are 2 512 byte keys. So let me show it to you. MHS0302, and then search for keys. You will see something called access keys, and this is where you can use the storage account name and one of the access keys or connection strings. But keep in mind, access keys and connection string gives you full control on the storage account. It's like I'm sharing your username and password. Hey, I don't want to give you full control. Rather, I want to control what you can do. That's where SAS can come into play, shared access signature. So what permissions? Should I just give you read-only permissions, or should I just give you allow a particular operation? I can do that. What resource? What permissions? And for how long? How much time do you want me to give you this for? So that's where your shared access signature comes into picture. So what is the benefit? They do not expose your storage keys. They work with the help of tokens, which is basically a URI, which includes the storage resource plus the SAS token itself. URI will have details like start time, expiry time, protocol, signature information, and all that. So the main purpose here is don't give full access, rather give controlled access. That can be done through SAS, shared access signatures. Just give me a thumbs up if you're following me so far. I mean, it must be annoying me asking this question time and again, but this is just to make sure that you guys are still following me, okay? Now, after that, we have Azure AD integration, which means, hey, can I use Azure Active Directory username and password to access storage account? Yep, you can do that. No keys required. Authentication to the storage account can be done with Azure AD credentials. And then who can perform what actions? That can be controlled through something called RBAC, role-based access control. Another option that is to share the keys. This is the less usage options because it's like sharing passwords. Client-side encryption is basically to secure your data in transit, which means rather than just securing the data at rest, if I want to secure the data in transit, I can do it from the application front as well. It's exactly what we are highlighting here. Then we have a service called Azure File Sync. We have talked about Azure File Chase, but what is Azure File Sync? This service does two things. One, it can act like a cache for your file share, which means any frequently accessed data by your customers, I can keep it in the file share. File sync server, and then that acts like a cache for your end users. So they can access it directly from the file sync server rather than from the file share. So this improves the performance. A simple example which I've given you here is, let's say you have a company called Contoso, which has offices in SFO, Singapore, Dubai, right? Earlier, they had their file shares locally, but now what you did, you consolidate them into one cloud share. So a user in Dubai has to access a cloud share to access a file, which he was doing earlier within local LAN. So to improve the user's productivity and improve the user experience, which means associated with the performance, what we did was, you bring Azure File Sync. What will Azure File Sync do? It converts any on-prem or cloud Windows virtual machine into a quick cache for your file share. We all know what cache is. Any frequent access data will be kept in the cache, so that next time when you want to access it, you get it directly from the cache, not from your original source. So that's your file sync. I said two features. One is cache. What's the second one? Second one, it can help you copy your data, move your data from one place to another place, primarily from on-premise to the cloud share. It can do that. These are the two things which you will get.
See all that fire merch right there? Dangling at fire merch.
Somebody's watching news all of a sudden. That's all right. Just keep yourself on mute. Come back.
Where do we run file sync? Does it run on Azure itself, or it runs like a utility?
Environment. Let's say it's a hybrid environment. You can convert any physical or a virtual machine in your on-premise environment to be a file sync server. If it's only cloud, you can make any cloud Windows virtual machine as a file sync server. So let me give you an article about Azure File Sync.
It's like AZ copy, is it, or different?